Look around you today, and you will see a world obsessed with visual evidence. We live in an era where success is measured by the size of the house in the background of a story, the badge on the steering wheel, and the labels stitched into clothing. We are conditioned from a very young age to believe that if someone is spending large amounts of money, they must have large amounts of wealth. But in the world of true finance, spending money is not a sign of wealth. Spending money is simply evidence that you used to have money, or worse, that you borrowed money you have not yet earned. Every single day, millions of people wake up and step onto a treadmill of financial performance. They work 40, 50, or 60 hours a week to earn an income, only to immediately surrender that income to fund an image. They buy things they do not need, with money they do not have, to impress people they do not even like. They operate under a fundamental misunderstanding of two critical concepts, net worth and cash flow. To master your life, you have to look at your personal existence the exact same way a CFO looks at a global corporation. You cannot afford to live in emotional illusions. You have to look at the cold, hard ledger. Let us define the terms, so the distinction becomes absolute. Net worth is simple subtraction. It is everything you own minus everything you owe. If you own a house worth $500,000, but you owe $400,000 on the mortgage, your net worth in that asset is $100,000. If you have $50,000 in accounts, $40,000 in vehicles, and $10,000 in debt, you combine the assets, subtract the liabilities, and you get a final figure. Net worth is your balance sheet at a single, frozen second in time. Cash flow, on the other hand, is movement. It is the blood pumping through the body. Cash flow is the rate at which actual money enters your accounts compared to the rate at which it leaves. It does not care about what your assets might be worth next year. It cares about whether you can pay your bills today without selling off the furniture. Here is the truth that destroys most people. You can have a high net worth on paper and still go completely bankrupt on Tuesday morning. Take the story of hiring professional athletes, music icons, or real estate developers who accumulated $50 million in paper assets during the prime of their careers. They bought estates, exotic car fleets, fine art, and equity stakes in businesses. On paper, their balance sheet looked magnificent. Banks lined up to lend them money. The world pointed at them as the definition of ultimate success. Then, the income slowed down. The contract ended. The market shifted. Suddenly, those multi-million-dollar estates still required $60,000 a year in property taxes. The maintenance on the exotic cars remained $5,000 a month. The staff, the upkeep, the lifestyle overhead did not shrink. Their net worth was tied up in physical objects and illiquid real estate that took months or years to sell. When the monthly bills arrived, they could not pay the electricity company with a piece of $1 million living room. They had massive net worth, but zero cash flow. Within a span of 24 months, these individuals were forced into liquidation, selling assets for pennies on the dollar. Completely broke. They looked rich right up until the moment the lights turned off. Now look at the opposite example. Consider a quiet small business owner who runs a commercial plumbing service or a local logistics firm. This person drives an 8-year-old pickup truck. They wear simple clothes. They live in a modest neighborhood where nobody turns their head when they drive by. On paper, their net worth might only be a fraction of the famous athlete's peak net worth. However, their business generates $40,000 in clear, predictable cash flow every single month, while their personal lifestyle expenses are capped at $6,000. Every month, $34,000 in excess liquidity pours into their control. If the economy collapses, they survive. If a crisis hits, they buy assets at a discount. If they decide they want to take 6 months off to spend time with their family, they walk away without asking anyone for permission, because their cash flow covers their existence automatically. Who is actually rich? The person living in a $10 million cage built out of high-interest debt and massive overhead, or the person with absolute liquidity? zero debt stress, and the power of total choice. The greatest trap in personal finance is mistaking liabilities for assets. A true asset puts money into your pocket without requiring your physical labor every second of the day. A liability takes money out of your pocket. When you buy a luxury vehicle on a 5-year loan, you have not acquired an asset. You have acquired a rapidly depreciating machine that demands monthly payments, expensive insurance, fuel, and specialized maintenance. The moment you drive it off the lot, its value drops by 20%, yet your obligation to pay remains at 100%. It is a drain on your cash flow designed purely to project an image of success to strangers at a red light. When you buy a house that is far larger than your family needs, stretched to the absolute maximum of your debt-to-income ratio, you have handcuffed yourself to 30 years of mandatory cash drain. You must pay principal, interest, insurance, maintenance, property taxes, and utilities. If your income drops for 90 days, that house ceases to feel like a dream home and turns into a financial anchor pulling you underwater. Society tells you to sacrifice your cash flow today to buy things that give you the aesthetic of we. ALTH. Financial intelligence tells you to protect your cash flow at all costs, using every extra dollar to buy or build assets that generate more cash flow. Think about how a corporate turnaround expert operates when called in to save a dying enterprise. They do not look at the company's logo, the fancy office decor, or the CEO's corporate jet. The very first thing they do is open the cash flow statement. They trace every single dollar coming in, and they ruthlessly cut every dollar going out that does not directly contribute to the survival and profitability of the firm. They stop the bleeding. They demand a positive operating margin before they think about expanding. You must run your life with the same cold and yielding discipline. Audit your ledger today. Look at every subscription, every vehicle payment, every dining expense, every impulse purchase, and ask yourself a simple question. Is this expenditure building my freedom? Or is it funding an illusion? When you trade your hard-earned cash flow for temporary status symbols, you are making a deal with the devil. You are trading your future freedom for present validation. You are agreeing to stay locked into a job you might dislike, under a boss you might not respect, because you have structured your lives so that you cannot afford to miss a single paycheck. That is not success. That is hiring poverty. True wealth is measured in time, not in things. If you stopped working today, right now, how many months or years could you survive maintaining your current standard of living? That number is the real measure of your financial health. If you make $500,000 a year, but you spend $490,000 a year to sustain your life, you are exactly $10,000 away from complete ruin. You are running on a treadmill at maximum speed, and if you take one bad step, the machine will throw you against the wall. If you make $70,000 a year, but you live comfortably on $35,000, you are accumulating $35,000 in pure liquidity every year. You have built margin into your life. Margin is where peace of mind lives. Margin is where strategy happens. Margin gives you the room to think, to invest, to pivot, and to act when opportunities appear. Look at historical panics and economic downturns. When markets crash, who survives and who gets wiped out? The over-leveraged get wiped out every single time. The individuals and businesses that stretch their cash flow to the limit to buy assets they could not afford are forced to sell those assets at massive losses to pay off their immediate debts. Meanwhile, the individuals who preserved their cash flow and kept their overhead low walk into the market during the panic and buy up prime assets, real estate, and equity for a fraction of their true value. The patient cash flow investor gets rich during the very same crisis that destroys the flashy speculator. Stop measuring your progress by what you can buy, and start measuring it by what you can control. When you shift your mindset from net worth accumulation to positive cash flow management, your daily decisions change completely. You stop asking, Can I qualify for the loan to buy this? And you start asking, will this decision increase my monthly free cash flow or decrease it? If an acquisition decreases your free cash flow without providing a clear, measurable return, it is a luxury. Earn the right to buy luxuries. Never buy luxuries using primary income generated by your personal labor. Buy luxuries using the passive cash flow generated by the assets you built through sacrifice. If you want a luxury vehicle that costs $1,000 a month, do not go out and work extra overtime hours to pay the dealership. Instead, take your capital, invest it into cash-flowing assets, whether that is dividend equities, rental income, or a secondary enterprise, and let the yield from those assets pay for the vehicle. If your assets cannot generate the $1,000 a month, you cannot afford the vehicle. It is that simple. When you force your assets to buy your luxuries, you never lose ground. Your core capital remains intact, working for you every day, while the excess yield funds your lifestyle. This requires a complete destruction of ego. You must become entirely comfortable with looking unimpressive in the short term so that you can become unshakable. In the long term, you have to accept that people who are broke on paper will drive past you in newer cars, wearing more expensive clothes, living in bigger houses. You must look past the shiny paint and see the high-interest debt, the anxiety, the sleepless nights, and the complete lack of freedom hiding right beneath the surface. Let them have the applause of the crowd today. You are playing a completely different game. You are building an engine that runs quietly in the background, compounding month after month, year after year, until your baseline existence is completely detached from the necessity of labor. Imagine what your life feels like when your monthly baseline expenses are fully covered by cash flow that does not depend on your physical presence in it. Office. The morning alarms sound different. Your stress levels drop to zero. Your interactions with other people change because you no longer negotiate from a position of desperation. You never have to stay in a toxic business partnership, a dead-end job, or an unhealthy situation because you need the money. Cash flow provides the ultimate leverage in human existence. The ability to say no without hesitation. Start today by conducting a total audit of your personal enterprise. Write down your total monthly inflow from all sources. Then, list every single outbound stream with absolute honesty. Categorize every line item into two columns: fuel and friction. Fuel consists of expenditures that preserve your life, build your capacity, or directly generate future income. Friction consists of expenditures that exist purely to sustain lifestyle creep, impress external observers, or satisfy temporary emotional desires. Cut the friction systematically. Take the capital you liberate from those cuts and direct it immediately into building your cash flow reserves. First, establish an emergency operational reserve that guarantees your survival for 6 to 12 months regardless of macroeconomic conditions. This is your shield. Once your shield is built, turn your attention to the sword. Deploy every excess dollar of cash flow into acquiring assets that yield predictable, recurring income. Build it brick by brick, dollar by dollar. Do not be distracted by short-term flex culture. Do not let the illusion of looking rich derail you from the reality of being powerful, stable, and truly free. Net worth is a vanity metric you put on a document to feel good. Cash flow is the real-time proof that you own your life. Choose freedom over appearances, choose stability over status, and build an empire that stands long after the applause has faded. ****, please like and subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching.